Morning, everybody. This is Jesse with ROI Safety Services. I am going to cover Hazcom. I'm going to call this part two. I have kind of an introduction on our YouTube channel already, but I would like to add a little bit more information to Hazcom and stress the importance of it. And the reason is I've just recently had two different OSHA inspections, and both of them were were pretty were actually pretty surprising in terms of what was cited and how much the citations were for. And it both had to do with Hazcom and emergency eye wash stations and basically the safety data sheets. Okay, so in both situations, the customer, or what OSHA calls the employer, did not have safety data sheets, and they did not have training. And is that surprising? Not at all. Is not having safety data sheets surprising? Kind of, sort of, because most vendors in the US provide safety data sheets without even asking. They give them to the purchaser with their, typically with their packing slip when they order it. So this is nothing new, and it's been around for a decade. So for them to get cited on this, or them being the two clients I have, um, and them not having it, let me back up. They were not my clients prior to the OSHA inspection. So obviously, if they were our clients, they would not have had this citation. So that's the other thing I kind of want to, bring up is if you don't have these things in place, something as simple as a Hazcom program or a safety data sheet and then training, you're going to get fined. And in some cases, you can get fined significantly. And in other cases, not so much. It's just kind of a slap on the hand. But, why end up in that position when, you can take the proactive approach and get it done now. So that's why I want to add some more information to our YouTube channel and let everybody know that, hey, this is a big deal, that we need to have SDSs, we need to have training. So I'm gonna go over the slide deck. These are the objectives for all. This is our full-blown training course that we have. I'm just going to hit some highlights. Again, this is not a sufficient training course. This is I wouldn't even call it, well, I guess it, for lack of a better word, it is an introduction, but it's an introduction to pursue more information and to put these things in place. So our full-blown course is about 45 minutes or so, but these are the elements that we want to cover. GHS has been around. I think it's been around. I believe it's been around over 12, 15 years. It's been a while, and basically this is just, hey, we have a new program. This is OSHA. We have a new program. You need to have safety data sheets. You have 7 major elements that you need to cover. This is nothing. There's nothing new here in the last 12 years. You got to have an SDS. You got to have things labeled. It's pretty simple and straightforward. Very rarely do I go into a customer and not find something that's not labeled correctly. That is a go-to, low-lying fruit violation. The employer's responsibility is you got to have safety data sheets. And this is not anything that you will need to make a huge effort in doing. You order some oil from Shell. Shell's going to deliver you some drums of oil, and they're going to have a SDS attached to the drum. I know this because I've seen it over and over again. I was at a client on Wednesday, and they had 6 drums of Shell oil, and the one of the drums had the packing slip and an SDS attached to the side of it. That's typical for most vendors. The other way is to go on their website and grab the SDS from the website. Now, why is this so important? Why? Well, the name of the training is Hazardous Communications. We need to communicate the hazards of these chemicals to our employees. It is so important. There's so many different things that need to be considered when you purchase a chemical. Is it the safest chemical that we can use for what we're using it for? Do we need to have certain types of equipment? What kind of PPE do we use? Do we need to use? Should we put in engineering controls? These are all things that need to be considered. We're in California, most stuff you can't even buy. It's going to be pretty safe, I think, for the most part. Not everything, but most items, you can't sell much in California that isn't heavily regulated. So that doesn't mean that we don't have hazardous stuff here. We do, absolutely. But other states, you don't have the restrictions like they do here. I think Texas does have some pretty stringent restrictions, but other states, not so much. But we need to look at the safety data sheet. We need to consider the risk. We need to consider exposure to our employees. Anything that has any toxins like lead or anything that has silica in it, asbestos, anything like that is going to get flagged. You're going to have a warning on there. So we need to look at these warnings. And as an owner or a manager, you need to look at the safety data sheet and make sure that your employees understand. You hear the key word is understand. You could know that it's hazardous, but do you fully and completely understand that it's hazardous? That's the question that needs to get answered. Now, if you had an issue where an employee was exposed to some acid and they got burned and they said they didn't know and they said the employer never trained us and you don't have any records, they're going to sue you. They're going to win. This is probably a very simple case. And I hope that never happens to anybody, but if your employee doesn't understand that the material they're dealing with is corrosive or caustic and they get it on their skin and they don't know what to do, that's on you. Okay, that's on you as the employer. You need to be responsible for what your employees are being exposed to. This is very, very simple. Get the safety data sheet, read it. Now, how do we read the safety data sheet? Now, that's a whole nother training that I will touch on a little bit today. It's not too difficult. Let me just get to, well, let's start out at the program. You need to have a written documented program that should be in place and it should be available for your employees. Then we need to make sure that your employee knows how to read the safety data sheet and understand it. That is the key word, is understand the safety data sheet and what it means, what each category means. There's 16 categories and what does each one mean? And so that's something that needs to be communicated to every employee. Now, this training must be done prior to any exposure to this chemical. So when you hire somebody, even if it's a temp, you have to have some type of training. They need to understand the risk of the products, how to handle it safely, what kind of PPE to use, what the labels mean, and there's many other things that they need to be trained on, and it needs to be site specific. So putting together a list of your inventory, ensuring that you have a safety data sheet on each product that you have, and that everything is labeled. And then there's 16 parts to the safety data sheet. Each part has a significant category that they're going to communicate. Not all of them apply to the person using the material. Not all of them, but most of them. So you need to figure out how you communicate that. My suggestion is that you put everything in a binder like you see here, and then you sit down with each employee or as a group and you go over all of the requirements. You physically show them how to read a safety data sheet. I typically would go with the most hazardous product. If you're dealing with acetone or caustic soda or any kind of toxic material, I would definitely go over that safety data sheet and discuss how to protect yourself from it. What are the hazards? And if you need to do any air monitoring, which often does get overlooked. If you're dealing with a product, typically over an 8-hour day, you need to have some air monitoring done. And so those are some considerations that you need to have looked at. Not just that, but there's multiple things that need to be looked at. So here's some pictures. I love to show pictures to clients that well, what is this? How does this impact the workplace? Well, here you go. Here's a 1 gallon bottle of water that, or container that does not have water in it. We know that this has water in it typically, or that was the original content, and now it looks like there's something else in there. I don't know what. I'm assuming it's some kind of, to be honest, I don't know what that is. I usually see lubricants put in these secondary containments, but I don't remember where I took this picture at. This had to be, this is several years old. But there's more. These drums are contain some kind of bag house material. They're not labeled, and that material in there, I know, is toxic, and it is a hazardous waste. So it must be labeled, even though there are some exemptions for hazardous waste, but it still is in the workplace and it must be labeled. It should have some kind of warning on there, and this is not happening here. Here's some more water bottles. Now this kind of has a greenish tint to it. I'm pretty sure this is a machine lubricant. It needs to be labeled. And here's the 16 sections of a hazardous or a safety data sheet. So the areas I typically will look at first is handling and storage, first aid measures, and exposure control. Those are the areas I typically will look at, but of course I look at the entire SDS to see, various other types of information. 12, 13, 14, and 15 are not regulated. Everything else is, so that is something that you don't need to cover, but it's a good idea if it's relevant to what you're doing. And then we have these pictograms. Pictograms are very, very helpful, and it's clear what the product is. Is it toxic? Is it corrosive? And these pictograms will help identify what that particular material is. And then we have everything needs to have a label on it. Okay, we need to put labels on products. All products should have label. You saw the bottles. I mean, we don't know what they are, but we have a good idea of what it is. Most vendors, I can safely say all vendors that do business in the US are going to have labels like you see here. You just don't do business here without having proper labeling. You may do it for a while, but eventually you're gonna get called on it. Someone's gonna start not ordering from you because they're gonna get in trouble. So everything needs to have a name, address, phone number, a product identifier. You see here it says danger, or a signal word is danger, and then what is the product, what are some hazards, and then the pictograms. This is very common. You don't need to go far in any business to find labels. Labels are just so common. I have gone into medical, to industrial, to refineries, distribution companies, and this is not a problem, like it was 10, 15 years ago. Everything from the vendor is going to be labeled clearly. You have various types of labels, but they all pretty much they all should communicate the same thing: the hazards, how to handle it safely. So the training requirements are real simple. The training must be documented. It must be done when there's changes in the organization. That's why we always say train at a minimum annually on Hazcom and most topics, because things change constantly. If you get a new product in or a new process, you definitely want to have the SDS and go over it with everybody in that environment, in ensuring that everybody is aware and understands the risk in which they are being exposed to this material. Now, again, this is not a full, complete training module. I encourage each of you to evaluate your Hazcom program. If you don't have one, great. That's even better because now you can create one. Contact us at roisafetyservices.com. Get on the website. Send out a quote request. I'd be happy to help you. Call me directly. I am the owner of this business, and my commitment is to ensure that everybody in the U.S. work in a safe environment. And I'm here to help you guys. Nobody should lack training in their company. No employee should be ignorant of these requirements. We need to communicate this to everybody. We don't want any injuries. We have too many people dying every year in the workplace. Contact me directly at 714-520-1608. I would be happy to help you to get into compliance. Too many people are getting hurt. We need to put an end to this. And the first step is being responsible for your working environment and getting into action. There's a lot of resources out there. So many resources, but it's difficult having a small business accessing all these resources. And we get busy in the day-to-day activities. That's why I created this company, so I can assist you. We're here to help you. Give me a call, shoot me an email. I'm here for you. ROISafetyServices.com is our website. My cell number, my direct line is 714-520-1608. God bless you and have a wonderful day.